Welcome back to the Worship Keys podcast.
Yes.
Y'all, again, Curt Buell's with us for another episode, and we're just going to really get down into the nitty-gritty of music theory. If you missed last episode, go back and listen to that.
Yes.
We talked about Curt's life and how he learned music, how he loved the piano, all the wonderful artists he's played with, the churches he's been a part of. Definitely go back and listen to that episode. But today, Curt, let's get into just the nitty-gritty of some music theory and how people can learn from whether you're a beginner pianist or maybe you're already been playing for a little bit and you want to go to expert level.
Absolutely.
You're going to be talking about the circle of fifths, the number system, the phone number that we use.
That's right.
Y'all, this is going to be a good episode, and thank you so much for being on the podcast,
Carson,
Curt.
thank you for having me. Everybody that's watching, thank you. And I hope that this stuff helps. I really do.
All right, Curt, so take us through what you would teach someone who is a beginner who really wants to go to that next level, man.
The first thing that we all have to know how to deal with is the major scale. If I can learn the 7 notes of the major scale, I can pretty much learn everything else as it relates or compares or potentially contrasts to the major scale. So the first thing, and I like to use the number system for this because there's 12 major scales, right? Each of them is built the same way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. If I were in D flat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. They all sound the same. So if I can first of all learn the layout, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, I can build that in any key. The foundations of Western musical theory are based upon the major scale. Our minor scales come from major scales. Our chords come from major scales. So the first step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And I encourage everybody that's learning this stuff, sing these. You do not have to be a singer. You don't have to be a good singer. Just try to get close to the right pitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. This will help you to internalize it. That way, when you hear this stuff out in the real world, you'll understand exactly what's going on. If I know those 7 notes, and here's how I tell my students this. We can do 7 of anything. If I said, Carson, drop on the floor and give me 7 push-ups, you could do it with no problem. A better, more enticing example would be if I brought a plate of cookies to you and said, eat these 7 cookies. We could do that without any problem. So we can deal with 7 notes. There's 12 total different notes.
And the number of completion, man.
There you go. So like we've got 88 keys. We break that down into 12 different notes. Our most usable pattern will be these 7. If I can get that, now I can start building chords. Now, the thing about chord theory is that chords are typically built in thirds, not always, but some great examples would be the major scale. Or I'm sorry, the major triad, the minor triad, the augmented triad, the diminished triad. And then you got your susses and stuff. Some of these they were outside of the major scale, but if I know 1, 3, 5 of the major scale, I get the major triad. Therefore, I can get minor, which is flat 3. But still the same 1 and 5. If I want a diminished, I compare that to this. I say, well, it's a major chord with a flat 3 and a flat 5. I'm relating this flat 3 and this flat 5 to the 3 and the 5. Now, if I want to play a song or something, for the most part, in modern music, the chords that we're going to want to play come from these 7 notes. And each of these, if we consider this to be the root note, which it is, I can build this third and this third on top. So I've got my major. Now, if I know this, I can pick this chord up and move it directly to the right using only the white notes. We know that C major is only white notes. So now I've got my 2 chord and my 3 chord, my 4 chord, 5, 6, 7, 1. Why is the number system so useful? We're used to putting things in order. Right. And that's all we're doing. We're putting things in order of pitch. And then, therefore, we're putting our chords in order of pitch. And so a great way to practice these is to relate them all back to the 1. The 1 is the home chord, the most important, the tonic. You know, we've got different names for it, but it's the most important of any major scale. Right. So to learn this, we start with the QC because it's all laid out for us. And I learn all 7 chords. There's going to be 3 majors and 3 minors. With most modern songs, if we're talking pop music or rock music or CCM, contemporary Christian music, most of those use probably 4 chords. They may be in the same order throughout the song, or maybe like the bridge will be a little bit different, but it might recycle the same 4 chords just in a different order. Right. So all of those come from these 7 notes. And I learn it really well in C. Here's how I relate them back to the 1. 1, 2, 1, 3, and I need to sing these and say these things out loud so that my brain knows what I'm doing. 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5. Why do we do that? Because eventually those chords are going to come right back here, right? So it's all right there.
Yeah.
And then every single other key that we want to play in, if it's a major key, will be built exactly like that. So I learned the pattern here in a very easy way. Now, if I want to play something like this, all this stuff's coming directly from those 7 chords. We also want to know that 1, 4, and 5, so 1, 4, and 5, typically are major, right? That pattern would translate if I were in the key of G, for example. 1, 4, 5. Again, I'm only using those 7 notes, and I can create an infinite number of chord progressions with just those 7 notes. I don't need to know anything else to get started. And then, boom, I just take that through all 12 keys. What else can I do with this? Well, I don't have to just stop at triads. I could do diatonic 7 chords. This is going to teach us different iterations of these initial triads that we've got. So, for example, when I go and add the 7, again, chords are typically built in thirds. This is a third. This is a third. The next logical third would be here, if we're using the notes of the major scale. I can take this shape and pick it up and move it to the right, the same way that I did with this. So now I get a whole new round of chords called the diatonic 7 chords. D minor 7. We actually started here. C major 7. D minor 7. I also learn how these are supposed to sound. Major 7 sound soft and pretty. That's how I teach it. Minor 7 sound dark and sophisticated. You know, they're not so gritty like that. They're more, you know, soft and pretty, dark and sophisticated. As I move through this, I just did another minor 7 and a major 7. Here's a really important one, the dominant 7. This is a major triad with a flatted 7, but we're still in the key of C. We've not used anything outside the key of C. So a lot of times we would use something like this in traditional music to help us get back to the 1 in a more interesting way than just this. You know, this chord can be inverted, for example, this way. You know, so I get all of these things just from these 7 notes. I've not used anything outside of this. And for somebody that's just starting out that doesn't know a whole lot, you've heard music before. You know that there's different things we can do. When we sit down and play this stuff, we're going to start making connections to the things we've heard before, right? So watch this. I've got all of these. I'll just go ahead and add the root note so you have some context. In the left hand, E minor 7, F major 7, G dominant 7 or just G7, A minor 7, and then the tricky one, B half diminished 7. We won't get into that today, but it is a diminished triad with a flatted 7. This would be useful if we were going to do something like a 7-3-6, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Something like that little chord. So they're all useful to us, but I still didn't really use a whole lot of stuff that was outside the key. Here's the other thing. For these more interesting things like, you know, like an E7 taking me to A minor, if I can get E minor first, I know then I can just unflat the 3, right? And then if I start learning about dominant chords like this, I know it's a flat 7 on top of the major triad. So when I get this E major triad, here's my flat 7, which I can then in theory put anywhere. I can put that here. Da, da. So I start picking up on these patterns of things that maybe aren't in the scale based on things I do know that are in the scale. Does that make sense?
That's great.
Cool. So that's how we get started. In fact, we can go to one more level. This one's a little bit trickier, but it does yield us some very nice sounding chords. We just did 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 7. What about 1, 3, 5, 7, 9? Right? So what I would do in this case, because most people can't hit this, what I would do is take the root note out of the right hand, play it here, and then apply the same strategy. Move this over. Now I got D minor 9. We started with C major 9. D minor 9. Now the chords are getting more interesting, right? I can have more unique expressions of what I want to communicate. You know, the same thing of soft and pretty applies here as well. It's just maybe a more elegant or more grown-up version of this. You know, we're going in levels here. So C major 9, D minor 9. This one will be interesting. Now we're dealing with something outside the key. Can we use that? Of course we can. It just might sound a little bit, out of the ordinary, but we like that, right? So I might go here, you know what I'm saying? I would also hopefully learn something like this to come after it, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second. But this chord right here, it's interesting, as I keep moving through these. F major 9, G dominant 9. Most of these patterns are the same from the 7 chords. A minor 9. This one gets a little weird. And so when we run into something like that, we might change some things. I mean, there's something to be said about trying different things. So when I reach this part and I'm like, well, that's weird. Let's see what I could potentially change. Maybe instead of, I just do that instead. You try different things until they work.
Right.
And you'll learn a lot of cool things on accident because you sat down and tried stuff. I can't tell you how many chords I've learned just because I tried to move a note around or something,
Right.
So we fixed this thing, or wherever we were, let's see here. That thing could become this, G over B.
Yeah.
And then we're right back where we started. So we learned this, we learned this first. Then we learn this. If I can do that, the next place I need to go, just for anybody that's wanting to then get out of the key of C, you need to travel in fourths and fifths. So for the flat keys, they travel in fourths. What I mean by that is the next most related key to C in the flats category is F. It moves up a fourth. It has almost everything in common with C major except one note. It's got B flat. But the muscle memory, for the most part, will be similar, if not the same. Most of the ways that I'll build these chords will feel the same to my hands. And it's almost like when I go to F or I go to G, because that's the sharp counterpart to the flat, here, if I go up a fifth, I get my first sharp key. But I can start trying things, and they'll probably make a lot of sense because I did it first in C. And then I went to the next related key. So just for anybody that is unaware of this, the next most logical place in your flats category after C, which has no sharps and flats, is F, if you go up a fourth. So then I can start trying these things. I just need to know the scale, but the pattern will work the same. And in fact, C major and F major share 6 notes. They share C, D, E, F, G, and A. They only differ in this and this. So any of those new chords that are going to utilize that B flat, it's as if I took the old chords that had, like in C, when we went to the 7, now in the key of F, we flat it and we get our 4 chords. So those new chords, they only differ in one note.
Right.
So my pattern for F is very similar. I can start doing this thing. I just need to know my scale.
Right.
So I would know that. But even this feels a lot like this chord down here. They're spaced out in a similar way. So that's what I mean when I say your hands will almost know exactly what to do. You just have to account for one new note. A lot of people would think, we need to go from C to C sharp. They have almost nothing in common. They only share 2 notes. So the muscle memory, the chord mechanics of building each chord, they're a lot different. If you look at the chart of the circle of fifths, they're on opposite sides. But what's next door to C on the circle of fifths? If you go to the left, it's F. If you go to the right, it's G. G is our first sharp key. So if I want to practice my sharp keys, I go up a fifth. So here I can do this thing again. 1, 2, 3. The new note is F sharp. C. There it is again. D major, E minor, F sharp diminished, and G. That's my first sharp key. So this also works great when you're trying to understand key signatures. This is going to help somebody watching this. So C has a blank key signature, no sharps, no flats. Same thing for A minor, the relative minor. If I go up a fourth, 1 flat, there it is. If I go up another fourth to B flat, 2 flats, up another fourth, 3 flats, up another fourth, A flat, 4 flats, D flat, 5 flats, G flat, 6 flats, C flat, 7 flats. Here's the sharps. So C, again, no sharps. Up a fifth, 1 sharp. There it is. Next sharp, key of D. 2 sharps. There's our new note. We're going to keep those, by the way, when we go to the next key, key of A. Up a fifth from D is A. That's my next place to go. After that, E. After that, B. We've already done this one as C flat, but because B has 5 sharps, we might prefer 5 sharps to 7 flats. So B major. Next one, F sharp. We've done this one already in G flat. They have an equal number of sharps and flats. It's just a matter of how you want to think about it. And then the next one, C sharp. 7 sharps. We've done D flat already, 5 flats. So that might be easier for us to think about rather than trying to compute 7 sharps on the grand staff. That's the key. And so what you need to do after you start figuring this stuff out, learn like a 4-chord progression. Some common ones would be like 6, 4, and 1. Anybody know that one? Stay with me, Sam Smith. 6, 4, 1. Let's learn that in the next key. So if I'm in F, it should still be 6, 4, 1, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 1. Sounds a lot similar to the other one. So learn a few progressions and then start taking them through the flats and the sharps in that order. Eventually, like in church, I teach people, we modulate all the time, right? If we were doing something like How Great Is Our God, we would take that 4-chord song, which we're going to use that in another example in a minute for a more advanced. But I would learn a song in that way. Go through your fourths, all your flats, go through your fifths, all of your sharps, then come back around and do it chromatically. So if I did How Great Is Our God in C, this is just a basic way. And I'll kind of walk this down. It's really just 1, 6, 4, and 5. After we've worked sharps and flats, go up chromatically like we would in church, you know. And this is how I teach people how to play in every key. Once we've gone through all of our fourths and fifths, we've capitalized on the muscle memory and the relationships of each key and the next key. Now we have a way to attack going chromatically, because that's probably how it's going to happen in real life. When we hear songs that have modulations, most of the time it's in half steps, sometimes whole steps. You know, we don't really see modulations in fourths and fifths unless we're dealing with a duet or something, you know, male and female or something. So probably the most common way is to go chromatically up just like that. But we can't do that until we learn all 12. We attack all 12 keys by doing the circle of fourths and fifths, which brings me to my next thing that I want to talk about. Okay, we are moving on to a more advanced technique. Now we've learned how to deal with all of our major keys. We just did a song, How Great Is Our God, right? And typically when we play this thing, you know, we just walk it down. Whoops, that was my pencil. It's fine. And we'll like walk it down, right? How do I make something like this more interesting instead of going, you know, 6, 5, 4, and then 5, and then 1? In church, we tend, especially in gospel settings, we like to use this idea of passing chords, right? What if I could teach you a way to use passing chords based on something that everybody has? Everybody has a phone number. What's a phone number? In the U.S., it's 7 digits, right? How many notes do we have in the major scale?
7.
7. So what if, if you can see this, what if we put it in an order that we typically see it anyways? And then, for example, if I'm trying to, let me actually recite it for you. It's 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4. This is the common way that we see, like, this is the circle fifths. This is what we tend to see in Western music, this idea that chords will move in fifths. And I usually teach it that it's moving downward. So, for example, like a 2, 5, 1, which we hear about all the time, 2, 5, 1. That's what I'm talking about when I say circle fifths. So how can we relate that to something we already know and use? Well, we got 7 digits here, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4. Now, if you're looking at this, I'm not sure if you can see it, but look at every other one, 7, 6, 5, 4, right? We traveled that way in How Great Is Our God. We went 1, 7, 6, right? We were skipping over some numbers, 6, 5, 4, for example. What if I, instead of going 7, 6, I went 7, 3, 6. This is how you learn where those passing chords are coming from. We hear this stuff all the time. In fact, one of Marvin Sapp's songs, Never Would Have Made It, it does this exact thing. 1, never would have made it. 7, 3, 6. You'll hear this on the record. 2, never would have made it. Minor 5, without you. 1, 4. So I can use this idea of 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4 to help me predict or to find out what the best chord would be to put in between 1, 7, 6, right? I can do 7, 3, 6. You would have to know what voicing. So, for example, in How Great Is Our God, we would do something like, according to the melody, sing with me, how great. So I went from going 1, 7, 6. I did have to change the timing of that chord. Sing with me, how great. It doesn't even have to be that advanced. It can be like, sing with me, how great. It doesn't have to be that E7 flat 9. It could be E minor 7. But this gives me something I can look at every time I want to use a passing chord. And it doesn't necessarily have to, like, for example, we're walking down, yes, 7, 6, 5, 4. But what if I just want to go from 1 to 6? What comes before 6? In 7, 3, 6, it's a 3. So if I need a cool way to get to the 6th chord, I can use a 3 of any kind. It could be this, it could be this, it could be this. But I use this idea of 7 digits, the phone number, which everyone memorizes their own phone number, right? So memorize this one, 736-2514. And I tell my students, get a sticky note and put it on the piano. That way, when you're practicing and you find a place that you hear, oh, something needs to go here, you're going to find that chord that you're trying to get to. If I'm trying to get to the 6, I have an exact thing I can look at and say, I should use the 3. Does that make sense?
That's good.
So I can do 1, 3, 6. Or what if I want to get from 6 to 5? I can play something like this, a 2 chord, 6, 2, 5, Now I'm doing some more advanced voicings, but it's the thought process that I'm trying to articulate here. And so let's say I want to get from a 2 minor to a 1, and that was written into the song. I can add something in between. So I can go 2, 5, 1. Imagine I was playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. That was 2 minor to 1. How do I make it more interesting? 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4. So 2, 5. There's my 5, 1. This works pretty much every time.
So good.
People ask me all the time, how do I know what to do? This came from my observation, just like with Never Would Have Made It. Never would have made it. This is in everything. Never would have made it without you. It uses the whole phone number. Another great example for those that like gospel, Because of Who You Are. Do you know that one in F? Because of who you are. And I'll throw in some cool stuff. 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, and we'll go to the chorus. That's 1, passing, 4. Now I'm going to do a 3 and a 6. 2, 5, 1, 4, 1, 4, 6, 2, minor 5, 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5. Maybe I repeat it. 6, 2, 6, 2. We'll end here. 5, 1. And I use the phone number. So I went from just using the stuff that was in order. We learned this already. We've repurposed those 7 notes to give us a predictable way, to use better chords or better ways of getting there. Yes. I call the circle fifths the scenic route. Now, if we got time, I'll show you an alternative way. So think about when you're taking the scenic route home, right? From the gym or from a restaurant or something. You want to like hear all the pretty stuff on the way there and see all the pretty stuff. Maybe the sunset and the lake and whatever, the beach or whatever. What if we're just kind of like wanting to get home and get back on the couch, right? And we don't want to take the scenic route. We can take a shortcut instead.
Right.
So an alternative to the circle of fifths, think about this real quick. We'll go back to C. 7, 3, 6, for example. There is another way to get to 6 from 7. Watch this. 7, flat 7, 6. The shortcut. 7, flat 7, 6. So instead of 7, 3, 6, I can 7, flat 7, 6. I can go 6 instead of 6 to 5 minor. I can go 6. In fact, watch this. The same chord I use here, I can use it here chromatically. And this would be an example of tritone bass substitution. The bass note would have been a 2. What's a tritone? A tritone is 3 whole steps. So 1 whole step, 2 whole steps, 3 whole steps. That same chord I used here, this D13, I can now use there. The shortcut.
Yeah.
So now, how great is our God? Seven, flat 6, 6, flat 6, minor 5, flat 5, 4. So now I can mix and match these things, but it comes from the circle of fifths. This is an alternative. They're going to get me to the same place. 7, 3, 6, 7, flat 7, 6, 6, 2, 5, 6, flat 6, 5, 5, 1, 4, 5, flat 5, 4. So I mix and match those. And then I might do my 2, 5. Now here's another use for the phone number. I need to turn this around. So watch. 6, 2, 5. If you're watching my hands, look at what my pinky's doing. 1, 6, 2, 5. So now I have a cool turnaround. And if I learn that 1, 6, 2, 5, 1, guess what? I can do that in any key. E flat. 1, 6, 2, 5. Name above all names. 7, 3, 6. Yeah. 3, 6, 2, minor 5, flat 5, 4.
Yes.
Here's a turnaround. 2, 5, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. We hear this stuff all the time. Everywhere we hear it in classical music, we hear it in jazz music, jazz standards, Broadway stuff, Hollywood stuff. I mean, the circle of fifths is baked into everything we do in Western music. So how do we make it work for us? The same way that we've been talking about. 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4. We would probably see this stuff in a jazz tune like Misty in E flat. That's a 1, minor 5, 1, 4. Now watch this. Changing the key, 2, 5, 1. Really, we only leave the key for like 2 chords, but 5, 6, 2, 5, 3, 6, 2. Here goes. That's a 1. Minor 5, 1, 4. 5, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's in everything. If I play Somewhere Over the Rainbow, 1, 6, 3, 2, 5, 1. Where does 1 go? Typically goes to 4. 5, 6, and it doesn't have to be perfectly that way. A song is going to be a song, right? We're just trying to deal with the changes we've been given and then throw some cool stuff in. So it doesn't have to be a perfect thing. Like in this second half of this, there's a land that I heard of. It was a 4, right? And then a 4 minor, and then a 5. It didn't go, 4 and then somewhere else. We went 4 and then 5. And then the song tells me to go to 6. But what do I do after that? 6, 2, 5, 1. So this is something we all can relate to because we all have one of these. We all learn it by heart, right? When I tell you my phone number, which I'm not going to do here, but I can do it from memory, right? We should be able to do this thing from memory too. 736-2514. So this is a more advanced application. How do I get from chord to chord? Think about the chord you're going to and think about what comes before that particular number on the phone number. So you have to know your number system and your major scale to be able to do this. In fact, there are things like let's see if I can remember this. There's a song that goes to like a flatted 5, a church song. I can't remember it right now. But like we can use the phone number for things that lie outside the key too. What would come before 7? Right now we've been talking about 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4. What if I potentially need something that comes before 7? Work backwards. What's the 5th above there? Flat 5. Flat 5, 7, 3, 6, 2, 1. And maybe I go to a 4. What comes after 4? Flat 7. So it can lie outside the key too if you know how to use it. So now I've got potentially, in fact, I could probably use this in Somewhere Over the Rainbow. You see what I did there? 1, flat 7, 6, 3, 1.
Wow.
4, flat 7. So that one, it wasn't in the phone number, but if I just think about my 4, what's a 5th down from 4? Because that's what we've been doing. We've been traveling down in 5ths.
Right.
What's the next 5th? So I can, there's a land that I've... Now here's that shortcut thing. Flat 7, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4. Does that make sense?
So good, yes.
Yes. So easy, though, right? When you think about it like that. We hear this stuff all the time.
Absolutely.
So that's where I got it from. I was like, oh, now this is easy to teach because everybody's got one of these. And if we can just remember those 7 digits or write them down and put them on a sticky note when we're trying to get to a 4, what can we use? We can use a 1, or a flatted 5,
right,
the tritone to the 1, right?
Man.
So that's the phone number. This is how we utilize the circle 5ths, not just in church music. We see it in jazz music. We see it in classical music. Every now and then we'll see it in some other genres and stuff. But we hear this. It sounds very familiar when I play 2, 5, 1. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Cool.
I think it's interesting, too, just as a technique thing, that you're playing 2 notes with your thumb a lot on the left hand.
Oh, you mean like this? In the right hand or the left hand?
The left hand, too. I've seen sometimes you're doing F and G together.
Mainly, I've seen people do that. Mainly for me, it's going to be like my right hand thumb. Because, take this for example. This is F minor 9.
Yeah.
If I add the B flat right here, I get F minor 11. So listen to the difference. It's subtle, but there is a difference. That versus... You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I see. Yeah.
Now, my Aunt Sharon taught me that. She did. So I got to give her credit for that. When I was about 15, she showed me that. In fact, it was this move right here in the key of G. She taught me 7, flat 7, 6, something like that. You know what I mean?
Man.
So yeah, it's such a cool thing. Like that's something I remember. You know what I mean? Another gentleman taught me in the key of F how to go from minor 5, flat 5, and 4. So I didn't always understand this as the phone number. I just knew, okay, there are some cool chords here I can play. Eventually, as I started teaching it, I was like, I've got to have a way of this to make sense for everybody.
Right,
Not everybody had that same experience as I did, right? So I used or came up with the phone number. I'd never heard that taught anywhere like that before. So I'm thankful that it came to me in that way, but it's such a relatable thing, right?
Yeah.
We can do 7 of anything, 7 cookies, 7 push-ups, whatever the case may be. So we're just utilizing these 7 notes in in a new way, a
Yeah.
way that makes things interesting for us.
So good, man.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being on this episode
Yes,
with
sir.
me. Man, what are your future goals?
My goal, so I just recently moved here to Nashville, and my dream has always been to be a studio musician. And so aside from teaching, that is the thing that's next for me, is being in the studio. I love to create music. I love to just come in here and play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the thing I've always done and always loved. And the thing about studio that I've realized is that music is going to live on forever. As long as we've got CDs and digital music, Apple Music, Spotify, that kind of stuff, this music will long outlive us, right?
That's good.
And so legacy is very important to me because I've been the beneficiary of a lot of great legacies. Like
Yes.
I'm listening to people play that have been dead for decades. Bill Evans is a great example.
Goodness.
Arthur Rubinstein, who played all of the Chopin and Beethoven and all the great works of these classical and romantic composers, like he's been dead for decades. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
but like their music outlasts even them.
Absolutely.
Legacy is very important to me because I've been the beneficiary of a lot of incredible legacies. I want my students and my colleagues, my friends and family to turn on like a record long after I'm gone
Yes.
and still hear me play. This is how we solidify ourselves in music and in history, is being recorded. And to me, there's nothing better than that. There's nothing more fun, too, than walking in and playing a great B3 or a great Yamaha C7. You know, it's fun, but there is that legacy component as well, which I'm very invested in.
Amazing. Thank
Yes,
you so
sir.
much. Curt Buell with the Buell Institute
right.
of Music. Y'all go check them out. How can people connect with you?
If you will just email me or go to my website. My website is curtbuell.com. Very simple, very easy. CurtBuell. But you can also email me at contact@curtbuell.com. I answer all the emails that come through there, so I will see it if you want to get in touch with me. You can also reach out to me on social media. Curt Buell is my Instagram, my YouTube, my Facebook, and you can reach out to me that way via email or on my website or fill out the contact form on my website. Any of those ways works for me.
Awesome, Curt. Thank you so much, and thank
Thank
y'all
you.
for listening to this podcast.